What's something that made you angrier than you have ever been? When I was 16, my mom remarried Richard, a celebrated surgeon who moved us into his lakeside mansion. At first, he seemed perfect, funding my photography classes and building me a dark room in the basement. He'd introduced me at hospital galas as the next Annie Leibovitz. I thought I'd finally found a father figure who believed in me, especially after my biological dad abandoned us when I was 7. Richard would spend hours discussing composition with me, even arranging for me to shadow a National Geographic photographer. Everything changed when Richard's son, Marcus, came to live with us after his mother's death. Marcus was 12 and clearly traumatized, flinching at sudden movements. Richard transformed overnight. The dark room became off-limits because Marcus needed space. My photography equipment mysteriously disappeared. When I found my camera lenses in the trash, Richard accused me of putting them there for attention. Meanwhile, he was forcing Marcus into competitive swimming, despite the boy's terror of water. I discovered Marcus crying in the bathroom, his shoulders covered in bruises. "Dad says champions push through pain," he whispered. "He says Mom would want me to be a champion swimmer like he was." Richard would wake Marcus at 4 a.m., making him swim laps until he vomited from exhaustion. When Marcus failed to improve his times, Richard would withhold meals, claiming weight management is part of athletic excellence. My mom, working double nursing shifts, rarely witnessed these training sessions. When I tried telling her, Richard convinced her I was jealous of his special bond with Marcus. "She's always been attention-seeking," he told her. This is why her father left. That night, I found Marcus secretly eating crackers he'd hidden under his bed. He was so thin I could count his ribs. I began documenting everything. I installed a camera in the pool area, capturing Richard screaming at Marcus until the boy hyperventilated, then forcing him back into the water. I recorded Richard weighing Marcus daily, berating him for gaining even half a pound. The worst was when I filmed Richard holding Marcus underwater during a breath training exercise until the boy nearly passed out. When Marcus developed pneumonia, Richard still forced him to train, administering prescription medications without consulting another doctor. I tried showing my evidence to my mom, but Richard had already convinced her I was fabricating stories. He even had his colleague diagnose me with adjustment disorder. The breaking point came during a regional swim meet. Marcus had been feverish all week, but Richard insisted he compete. Minutes before his race, Marcus collapsed in the locker room. Instead of calling for help, Richard slapped him across the face, hissing that he'd embarrass us both if he didn't man up. I was recording when Richard jabbed a syringe into Marcus's arm, some stimulant. Marcus's lips turned blue during the race, and lifeguards pulled him from the pool. Richard, furious about the disqualification, grabbed Marcus by his swim cap and dragged him toward the car. When I tried to intervene, Richard shoved me so hard I fell against the concrete, my phone skidding across the parking lot. That night, I compiled everything: videos, recordings, photos of bruises, documentation of the unauthorized medications. I included statements from our housekeeper who'd witnessed Richard forcing Marcus to exercise until he collapsed. I sent the evidence to Child Protective Services, the Hospital Ethics Board, and the State Medical Licensing Board. Within 48 hours, Richard was placed on leave. CPS arrived unannounced during one of his training sessions and found Marcus shivering in the pool at 5 a.m., barely able to keep his head above water. The medical board discovered Richard had been prescribing performance-enhancing drugs under false patient names. My mother finally saw the truth when investigators showed her the footage of Richard holding Marcus underwater. She filed for emergency divorce and custody. Richard's medical license was suspended, and he's facing criminal charges.